Hi, Victoria.
Hello, Dr. MacKenzie. Maybe I startled you because I had the appearance of a dog. I think I'm a person again.
Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, welcome to Science Society. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you.
I am going to pin a link up above. Katarina will be here shortly. And if you'll excuse me, I'm going to pin a link to your research above you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Oh, if you would please click on my photo and then click make a moderator, then I'll be able to do that.
Done.
Thank you. That was quick. Okay, good. Now we've got the link to your PowerPoint above. Welcome, friends who are arriving. Welcome, Dr. Mara. Welcome, Jamie. Feel free to ping other friends in. Welcome, Ansuman. Dr. MacKenzie, have you had a chance to go about Clubhouse a little bit and explore?
I haven't had too much chance to explore, but so I've only really looked at this room and had the introduction from Katerina. So yeah, it seems like a great platform, though. It's such a cool idea.
Hello, Dr. MacKenzie. How are you? I'm Jamie.
Hello. Good, thank you. How are you?
Like I was saying, fellow Scots.
Yes, absolutely.
Good. I'm looking forward to your talk today.
Thank you very much. You can just call me Lewis, by the way. It's fine.
Thank you, Lewis. You can call me Jamie. Thank you.
Okay, then you can call me Victoria.
Awesome. I'll mute just now and let you say hello to a few more people, Lewis.
I'm just inviting some other Science Society members in, and sometimes it can take a few minutes for people to arrive. We never know.
Oh, great. Thanks for explaining that, Victoria. That's very helpful.
Yeah, there's great variability. You know, sometimes we have a meeting, a room, and then suddenly Oprah appears on the app, and everybody goes to listen to Oprah. You know how it is. It's happened.
Really, that's happened. I'm just new here as well, Lewis. I'm literally only like 1 week newer, older to this platform.
Oh wow.
You, yeah. So are you new to? You're just new to it as well, right?
Absolutely brand new. Yeah.
Yeah. It seems to strangely a lot of potential in it, for people to have. I'm surprised how many people are in favour of all these kind of talks through this kind of medium, honestly. But pleasantly
Yeah.
surprised.
I mean, it's slightly unusual. I guess it's like having a podcast that you can join in with, right?
Yes, that's what I was thinking. It's just like that, or a radio show or something like that, where you've got like a talker and you actually can be involved. It's a
Yeah,
system that seems quite simple but incredibly effective so far that I've
the
seen.
involvement aspect is really community building too, because we can all be here and asked to speak. And in addition, we can learn about each other because you can click through bios and learn about the work that people are doing.
Oh, I should probably update my bio.
Oh, sure. Take a moment. Beef
Plus
up that
Victoria,
bio.
plus Victoria, how many places could a random person get to speak to Oprah other than in Clubhouse, eh?
Right. That's the way it is. And even with Science Society, we've been open only a little more than a month, and we've already got 1,500 members. So hooray for science.
I'll second that.
Yeah. Hey, Jen. Nice to see you. Let's see. She would like to come up. Come say hi.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Victoria. I saw that you were in this room, and you're always in very educational, nice, calm, wonderful rooms with great community, as I heard you say earlier. So I just thought I would join along and listen to the conversation today.
Oh, fantastic.
Thanks. It's nice for you to join, Jenny. That's great. Jamie, I wanted to ask, so you're in Scotland as well. Are you somewhere on the East Coast, going by your accent?
Yep, sorry, just unmuting there. I'm in Edinburgh.
Yeah, cool.
Yep, just nearby the castle. Where about yourself? Where are you at?
Currently in Glasgow, where it's been the typical 4 seasons in one day.
I know. Like roasting hot 2 days ago, and it's going to be snowing tomorrow, apparently. That's insane.
Oh, yeah, we've already had snow in Glasgow today, snow and sunshine.
Yeah.
Sounds
Isn't
beautiful.
it's lucky that climate change is a myth, right? Otherwise, we'd be in trouble.
I was visiting there a few years ago, right before the pandemic. My daughter, my youngest, spent a year at University of Edinburgh.
Oh,
And
it's such a brilliant city to visit. Yeah.
It was brilliant. It was, yeah, she was so sorry to come home. Tried hard not to. And it was a fantastic place to visit. And really, and yeah, we went to Glasgow just for a bit though, but mostly we're in Edinburgh, and the people were so welcoming. And of course it was beautiful.
If the weather's nice, the visuals in Scotland are truly magnificent. Just quite often they're kind of blanketed under haze and rain, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the architecture is lovely. Even in Glasgow, there's lots of nice architecture. If you look up, but half the time you've just got wind and rain in your face. So it's always sometimes hard to look up.
I'm in Oregon.
That's how we learn to be so upbeat, isn't it? Because we always try and look on the bright side because it's dark so often.
Yeah, you must. I'm in Oregon, and so we have a lot of rain and and clouds. But we did drive to Isle of Skye. I did, and that was absolutely terrifying to drive on those single track roads on that side of the street. But we saw the dinosaur footprints.
There was an amazing discovery recently from Skye that was on a lot of the science news channels, which was, I think, the largest ever pterosaur in Skye. Something along those lines was discovered in Skye.
I hadn't heard that. That's incredible, really.
Yeah, it's a team from Edinburgh University led by, I think, an American chap. I was just double checking the news there via Google. It's the headline is "The Winged Giant That Was Bigger Than T-Rex."
Wow!
Thank you.
The size of a giraffe.
That's amazing. I love finding out about those crazily huge dinosaurs, like the megalodons that sounded like if they existed now, they would just eat our entire fleet on the waves.
Did you say eat whales? What did you say?
No, I'm talking about the megalodons from prehistoric times.
Yes.
They were so massive that they would just eat our boats now. Like if they still existed, they would be
they could.
Yeah, we'd have to have some crazily high powered artillery to go and try and take one of those bad boys out.
Oh, we'd make friends with them, Jamie.
Megalodon hunting would not be a casual sport, you know.
No, we'd live alongside them peacefully. We'd learn each other's ways.
Yeah. Yes.
So something to I hear the sound of Googling. So something to know is we have replays on in the room. So even though people may be tardy upon arrival, that everything said will be available on replays. And Science Society has a podcast, so we've been reposting the replays there. And there's a YouTube channel, so there are lots of opportunity for people to take advantage. And yeah, something must be afoot on Clubhouse because um, I'm just going to take a moment to ping a few more people, and then I will be right back to
Okay,
begin.
thank you.
Jenny, feel free to ping your friends.
I'd rather be
I
here
am
than the full
pinging
priority.
away.
Well, Jamie, I meant to ask, going by your profile picture, are you a musician as well?
I dabble, you know.
Yeah.
Like I hear a tune. Like acoustic guitar is kind of my favorite just now because I fell in love with the Spanish guitar. When you hear that, you're just thinking, oh, that is just so incredible.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So,
Are you familiar with the Scottish artist called R.M. Hubbard? He's an amazing, like, sort of somewhere between punk and classical guitar, self-taught
really?
classical sort of flamenco guitar style. His first album is the one I've got called First and Last. I really recommend it if you're into that style of guitar playing.
I'm absolutely going to look him up. What was that again? RM?
Hubbard.
RM Hubbard.
Yeah, Hubbert.
Right. Not the creator of Scientology.
No.
I'm going to look him up. Thank you, because I'm always on the look for like that. Like because as I said, even though I'm like learning guitar and things, I'm not as widely sort of like what's the word for widely read, but with music that way as I'd like to be.
Oh, there's a near infinite amount of music out there as well. It's quite daunting.
Absolutely. When I hear people talking about indie music, like I want to be able to contribute, but I'm like, I don't understand what you're saying with these things. I don't know. What about yourself? Do you play something? Do you have a
Oh
hobby?
yeah, I'm mainly a bass guitar player.
Oh, nice.
And then yeah, I have an acoustic guitar at home and so on. Um, yeah, I really would love to get one of these Fender Bass Sixes, which is like a halfway between a bass and a guitar. They look really
Yeah.
fun.
Oh, I got a 12 string a few months back.
Ooh, very nice.
They sound amazing, actually. Um, they look really silly and like unwieldy, but when you play a chord on them, absolutely magical.
Well, okay, I'm going to share the link in a moment also, but I Katarina has had a bit of an emergency and she apologizes that she is late. She thinks she can make it in about 5 minutes. So if it's okay with you, we'll begin the room and then I will go about and try to send more links and more invitations. But to begin, Lewis, I'm interested to hear how you found your way to science and then perhaps also to your specialty, recognizing that that's a pretty broad question. However, it's, maybe when in your youth or now, not that you aren't still in your youth, but, at any point in your life or at any point in our lives, I feel like there's a point at which something really catches our interest and, in nature or, in the sky or something. And then there you are and you're just a science person for the rest of your life. So I'm curious if you've had an experience such as that.
Well, yeah. So these days, I'm quite I'd say, an all-round scientist in the way that I dabble in a lot of different disciplines, just like Jamie was talking about dabbling in music. But what really got started me off with my love of science was astronomy. It was space. when I was a kid. Growing up in the 90s, I remember seeing, was it Halley's Comet or was it Hale-Bopp? I think was potentially one of the comets in the 90s.
Hale-Bopp was first, and then Halley's came after. Those were so great.
Yeah. So I grew up near Glasgow in Scotland, out not too far out in the countryside, but far enough that you could see these, comets when they came, rather than the light pollution of the city. And yeah, I was just lucky. I had a family that was very encouraging, take me to museums and, I could watch Robot Wars on TV and watch documentaries. I remember being allowed to stay up late and see the BBC news documentary in the Horizon series about Schumacher-Levy 9 fragmenting and impacting Jupiter, right? Which is, I think, was that 1994? So I was just a little boy then, and so I went to study astronomy at university because I love space, and I kind of put up with the physics and with it the maths, but the maths wasn't really my strong suit, I have to say. I have a very difficult relationship with maths, and an astronomy degree is mainly mathematics. But the other side of astronomy degrees is also, if you want to, you can get involved in building or dealing with instrumentation, things to read out data from telescopes, for example, or to analyze light. And that was a side that I got into. And, a big moment for me was there was one summer, I think it was 2010, I got to do a summer project that paid for 8 weeks. So it's this is better than working in the shop where I was working at the weekends. So I could throw in the towel for that job, and I could work in a department at the University of Glasgow, which was the Institute of Gravitational Research, who was a big conglomerate of people who work on the collaborations that build gravitational wave detectors. And at the time of my undergrad, obviously, gravitational waves hadn't been detected yet, and all my lecturers were just saying, it's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time. And sure enough, it was a few years later. 2015, I think, was the first detection. But yeah, that opportunity really gave me some hands-on lab experience, and I thought for the first time, I might not be the best at all the maths and the derivations, but I'm not bad at working in a lab. And so I thought, well, maybe I could get a PhD in building telescopes, working on telescope instrumentation. That didn't quite work out, and it was a bit of a bummer. But then one day I saw an email that said, we're looking for a PhD student to work on optics for blood oxygen measurement. I thought, that sounds interesting. I don't have any qualifications in biosciences, not even at high school, not even the most basic high school qualifications. But I thought, that sounds interesting. And hey, I don't know much about cells, but I do know about blood. Everyone's got blood, quite relevant. So I ended up doing a PhD in that, which was looking at or cobbling together optical instrumentation and adapting existing optical instruments for imaging the eye, for example, and using that to measure blood oxygen levels, basically by looking at different color filters. So that's kind of how I got into biosciences. Then after my PhD, I went, right, what's next? Looked around for jobs and stuff and got a postdoc position working with some bioscientists who needed a little bit of optics kit built. And I learned so much from them about biosensors and things like antibodies and nanoparticles. And that's actually what I work on now, pursuing my own research. But then the subject matter of today is I actually ended up working in the chemistry department as a postdoc as well, building equipment, optics equipment for the chemists. And so I feel like I've done a bit of a grand tour of different science departments. I've worked in physics, biosciences, chemistry, and I've just been learning the whole time and kind of bringing together what is kind of unremarkable physics skills and building the optics and programming things, and then learning a lot from my colleagues in biosciences and chemistry to the point where I can have my own bioscience and chemistry ideas driven by biophotonics. and I could go off on a tangent about what I'm working on these days, but of course today we're talking about some research that I did as a postdoc, which is this chiral light imaging. So yeah, that's a bit about me.
Yeah, Lewis, the thing that I'm hearing, it's so interesting to hear your path into and toward optics, because hearing from, when you're mentioning the comets, it's like external to internal, and it's all the same, right? Like breaking down an atom, and gravitation, and the tiny and the enormous. And so it seems like it's just such a natural path that you found your way into optics. And thank you so much for that, for sharing that history. And I hear so much love of science in there. I want to welcome Katarina. Yay, you made it.
Yeah. Hi,
Thank you.
Katerina.
Hi, I'm really sorry. It's work emergency stuff. Um, we do implants now for patients, and I'm really sorry that it took longer than I expected. Thank you so much for coming.
Oh, it sounds like a very good reason to be a little bit late, to be fair.
Yeah, I didn't, we didn't expect some complications. I can't tell much, but it was like a very stupid mistake that happened in the OR, but it's all fine now. So, yeah, thank you so much for coming. And I know Victoria makes great introductions, so thank you so much, Victoria. And the PowerPoint is up, so I'm not sure, did we already start with the PowerPoint? I'm sorry if I
No,
missed.
we were just becoming, just hanging out, getting to know
Cool.
our researcher. And I wanted to say one thing that you reminded me of, Lewis. There's a book, The Powers of 10. I don't know if you'd ever
Oh,
heard of it. A
yes.
book about, right, Charles Eames and Phyllis Morrison, and your path just completely reminds me of that book
Yes.
that you
Yeah, The
described.
Powers of 10 is a wonderful book. I haven't read the book, but I've seen the video. The original video was from either the 70s or 80s, I think.
Yes,
And there's been a recent sort of
85.
there's a famous YouTuber, well, a popular YouTuber called CGP Grey, and last year, almost 1 year ago, he released a video called Metric Paper, which is it's the same concept as Powers of 10, but just with sheets of paper unfolding and getting bigger and getting smaller. I really recommend watching that video. It's great.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. And
Metric
if
Paper is what it's called.
I'll find it. And then if you're okay with beginning your presentation of your research, then the mic is yours.
Great. Thank you very much, Victoria. And thank you, everyone, for joining. It's nice to see so many faces in the room. Now, as Victoria said, there is a PowerPoint to go along with this. I'll try not to rely too heavily on that because although it's got images and stuff, I know there's obviously some people in the room who maybe aren't relying on obviously seeing things. So I'll try and describe things as we go along. I've also put together the PowerPoint because it kind of helps me remember what to talk about. I find it quite easy to go off on tangents, and sometimes I suspect I have a little bit some mild ADHD symptoms sometimes. So by having a PowerPoint, it helps keep me on track. But yeah, so today I'm going to be talking about research that I did as a postdoctoral researcher at Durham University in England. Now, Durham's a beautiful little town in England. If you ever get a chance to visit it, I would recommend it. It's got a beautiful cathedral, a beautiful river, lots of trees. It's a very nice place to be. And I did this work. Well, this work basically brings together chemistry and physics and biosciences. It's quite nice that way. And I'm going to be talking about chirality. Okay, so before I get started, I should say, so I was a postdoc in this work. My old supervisor is a chap called Dr. Robert Pal. This is on slide 1 of the PowerPoint. He's a very nice Hungarian chap. And then there's a bunch of other people who also helped and assisted with this work who are on slide 1. But to start off with, chirality, right? So chirality is a word that you might hear but not really know much about. It's, in simple terms, it's handiness. So if you think you've got a left and a right hand, although in many ways they're the same, you can't wear a right-handed glove on your left hand and vice versa. Or it's a bit like trying to play a left-handed guitar, for example, the other way around. So you've got chirality in chemistry. So you've got molecules that are left and right-handed. There's chirality in biology. This is slide 2. So we see patterns like spiral patterns in nature. For example, most snails have a right-handed spiral, and occasionally, as you see in slide 2, you get an unfortunate snail that has a left-handed symmetry and then wasn't able to mate. But that's like chirality in the scale of life. But also when you think of the other scale of life, down to molecules and proteins, a lot of biomolecules are also handy, left or right-handed. And so that affects the way that they bind, where the molecules go, and what they do inside our cells. So that's chemistry and biology. And then there's also physics. A lot of things in physics are chiral. And in this case, we're going to be talking about chiral light and how chiral molecules emit chiral light and how we can use that to investigate chiral phenomena in biology. So it's nice to kind of bring it all together. But to talk about this, I need to give you a little bit of grounding in some basic physics type things. Now, I think this might not display properly on your PowerPoint. Don't worry about it. Slide number 4, if you've got it open in front of you, is about linear polarized light. Now, some of you might have linearly polarized sunglasses at home, or just polarized sunglasses. You know, they're a bit more expensive, but they can block out reflections and make it easier for you to see, for example, fish in the water, if you like to fish. And generally, they work by you've got certain orientations at 90 degrees to each other, and the sunglasses will let through light depending on how you orientate them. So on the bottom right-hand corner, slide 4, you'll see an example of polarized sunglasses with a computer screen. A lot of computer screens use polarized light. These would be LED computer screens. And by rotating the linear polarized light, you reject the light from the computer screen and you just see darkness. And so that's pretty cool. And that's linear polarization. But also, slide number 5 says that's basically a lie. We know everything in physics is a bit of a lie. It's ever more complex and complex descriptions is physics. We need to take it to the next step of complexity. Physics is always increasing complexity until we get to the point where we're really digging around. But don't worry too much about this. There's a lot of jargon in this slide. It's just slide number 6 is one that I'd use for like a conference. Don't worry about it too much. You might see the important thing is the spiral patterns. So light, as it moves through space, is a wave. And if its properties are right, well, any particular photon can either move in the left spiral or right spiral, which is left circularly polarized light or right circularly polarized light. And you might not have heard of circularly polarized light before. And, you know, if I wanted to make it sound complex, I could talk about the properties of spin of photons and stuff. You know, the Quantum Optics Club might like that.
You
but
can mention mantis shrimp, I think, has a particular ability to sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, so a few animals can perceive circularly polarized light. In fact, humans can just about perceive circularly polarized light, but not in any precise way. There's a phenomena called, I believe, Heidinger's brushes, which is a visual phenomena. I haven't experienced it myself, but yeah, circularly polarized light. Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned that because we can see circularly polarized light with the aid of 3D glasses. If you go to slide 7, I don't know if some of you have ever been to, well, it's maybe been a while since folk have been to the cinema, and especially since you saw a real 3D, you know, if you think of the type of 3D glasses that came out when Avatar came out roughly 10 years ago, that was a big deal. You know, it was the big gimmick. It was these 3D glasses that were really, really good. Of course, they don't work for anyone. You know, they don't work for everyone. I had a flatmate who was always very annoyed because he had I think he had a glasses prescription that was quite strong and asymmetric, and he found that these 3D glasses did not work for him. But the point with this slide 7 is just that you can convert this circularly polarized light into linear polarized light with elements that are found in these 3D glasses. I won't go into what they are. They're just optical components. But the point is we can control these states of light, and you can convert one from another. So with 3D glasses, what they do is these particular 3D glasses, they project one image in left circularly polarized light and another image slightly offset spatially in right circularly polarized light. And then when you view these glasses, you view the screen through the glasses, one of your eyes gets the left circularly polarized light image, the other eye gets the right circularly polarized light image, and you essentially see two images overlaid in each other, which our brains interpret as 3D images. And talking about images, I just glanced out the window there, and I got a little bit distracted because, as we mentioned before the talk started, I'm in Glasgow at the moment. It was beautiful sunshine 10 minutes ago, and now the sky has darkened with snow. It's quite spectacular. Anyway, so to move on, to get to more of the chemistry side of things, if you look at slide 8.
May I ask a question? You wouldn't happen
Yes.
to be working with Lee Cronin, would you?
No, but I'm very aware of his work in
I think he was mentioning
computational chemistry.
Yeah, he was mentioning something with chirality as well, and I myself work in detecting biomolecules, so a biotech company that makes a sensor, and it's an interesting problem. The idea of chirality, can you perhaps speculate on the perception of how seeing that in every day could have a difference, or is it just not perceivable unless it's those edge cases? And I know this might be more of a neuroscience question, so we can move on if that's not appropriate.
That's a good question. Yeah, I think it is just these edge cases. You'd have to probably, to be honest, I don't know too much about the perception on day-to-day side of things. We really need technology to see it as humans, and with the technology, we can see some really nice details about the light that gets emitted, and also, well, the molecules that are emitting it. So I'm afraid you have to look up the neuroscience behind Haydn's brushes yourself. I don't have it on much information about it off the top of my head.
Yeah, thank you. I was just curious. Thanks.
Oh, you're very welcome. So yeah,
I've put a little in the chat. Sorry to interrupt. I put a bit in the chat. Welcome everyone. Feel free to use the room chat about the Heidegger's brushes.
Thank you, Victoria. Yeah, Heidegger's. Yeah, rather than Heidegger. Oh, I don't know how you pronounce it properly. Anyway, so the next side of things, we start thinking about chemicals, and I mentioned earlier that chemicals are also can be left and right-handed. They can be chiral. So this can be useful for a lot of different things, but especially when we think of, well, the chirality of the molecules affects how they bind. And obviously I've been talking a lot about light, and the chiral molecules can give off chiral light, which could be, we're going to build up to microscopes and chiral light inside cells, but one of the other aspects that this could be useful for is security inks. So if you maybe seen banknotes or passports under what people call black lights, which is ultraviolet lights, and banknotes from different countries and different years look different. So on slide 8, you'll see a 50-euro note. The red molecules, sorry, the red light from this is coming from a type of molecule that we'll talk about quite a lot. And so in slide 9, I can just give you an example of some molecules. Don't worry about the details here. but in the figure in the left, there's a left and a right-handed molecule of a class called Bow-Dippies. And on the right-hand side, if you've got the right instrumentation, you can read out the light as having a right-hand chiral bias and a left-handed chiral bias. So these molecules are giving out preferentially left or right-handed photons, depending on if the molecule's left or right-handed. Now, if there's chemists in the room, you'll know that chirality in molecules is quite complex to describe, but I'm just keeping it simple for now. But those are fairly simple chiral molecules. I say simple. A lot of work goes into making them. Yes?
May I ask just really briefly, because you were touching this is going to be my question later on, but since you brought it up, ultraviolet light then, is that chiral like light, or is that just a higher spectrum, like a higher frequency, or is that like how we can see ultraviolet with tools or with the right kind of light? Is that kind of light as well that rotates?
So any sort of light can be chiral. Because it doesn't matter what color or wavelength it is. So radio waves can be chiral, microwaves.
I was just going to say, actually,
ultraviolet.
Our team actually works in the RF range, and we'd be interested actually to recreate some of these results, because currently we're using like up to the 6 gigahertz range, which allows like the detection of glucose non-invasively through the skin, like an Apple Watch sort of scenario. So we thought, what else can we see? And one of the suggestions was to examine chirality. Do you expect similar behavior across the whole spectrum, or like what's the nature of the filter?
It should be, yeah. So it should be intrinsic to the chirality of the emitter, and now that differs in different length scales. But if you think about how different molecules act as antennas, for example, at different light scales, so I think a good example of this might be thinking about contactless card payment, and how a contactless card payment works over a certain range because it works with radio waves, and there's a sort of little kind of like a radio or component in the cards that has resonant frequencies with radio waves, and you can get a similar thing with molecules and light. So you can have chemical antennas that can absorb and resonate with visible light, for example, but instead of being the size of a credit card, they're nanometers across. So I think you should have analogous effects across the whole wavelength range that you study in physics. What that looks like physically, I'm not entirely sure in your particular wave range, which you said is gigahertz, because I'm not really familiar with the gigahertz band range too much. Apart from is gigahertz, is it millimeter wavelengths?
Okay. Yeah.
Roughly. Right. Oh, crikey. This goes right back to something I did at the start. I did a master's dissertation looking at millimeter wave radio telescopes for astronomy. I guess I tried to get a PhD in that field, and
that's awesome.
That didn't quite work out.
You get my follow for that. That's pretty awesome.
But the nice thing about going interdisciplinary is, in terms of science, and especially with light and physical principles, is that they are all the same sort of physical principles applied to different things across different wave ranges. And what a circularly polarized antenna or emitter looks like for a radio wave is a lot different than what a circularly polarized emitter looks like for a visible range wave, but it's all a matter of scale. So you're going from the scale of molecules with visible light to the scale of a person with a radio antenna, or even a building, So that's a really cool question.
Yeah, it was strange for us to be able to detect differences, for example, in viruses that had something like a difference in a gene. So one had a gene deleted and the other one did not, and we were able to make detections and identifications at that scale, which was kind of a very strange scenario because it's kind of unexpected in terms of just the normal models. And just by sheer coincidence, there was a paper out of Iran that just modeled like the molecule as like a loaded string. So just a bunch of weights, and then they found like, the magic numbers, as it were, for the simulation. And the numbers closely match the empirical data, not exactly, but closely. So it's a very strange situation to see that. So
Oh,
lots of cool possibilities for things.
that's cool. I'd love to find out more about how that sort of thing works.
I'll send you. I'll
Because it's
direct message you the Iranian paper.
oh yeah, that'd be amazing. Thank you very much. So to get back to molecules, so we're looking at slide 9. There's some molecules are left and right-handed, and then they give off light, and a sort of almost looks like a roller coaster kind of slope. A big steep bit up, and then a long tail down, and that can be left or right-handed depending on the handiness of the molecule. But if you go to the next slide, slide 10, you can have a more complex molecule, like the sort that's taken decades of chemistry research to really build a molecule that's got, in some ways many arms. It's got lots of different functional groups that could be changed in order to send it to different places inside a cell, for example. And it also has a really complex, if you look on the right side, there's a very spiky line around about the 0 point. It goes up and down, up and down, up and down. It's got a very complex chiral spectra. So it's not as simple as a left-handed molecule giving off only left-handed light, or a right-handed molecule only giving right-handed light. There's all sorts of inversions between them along the spectrum, and it's complex. And if you're a chemist, if you're like the people that I used to work with on this research, they could look at that spectrum and they could go, oh yes, this tells us about the electronic configuration about this europium ion. Europium's a lovely element. It glows bright red, which you can kind of see in this little image in the top left-hand corner in slide 10. It glows this lovely bright red color, and it's what's used in the security inks in slide 8 on that €50 banknote. But the point is, complex molecules give you complex spectra, and if you flick it to the next slide along, it gives some examples of some complex molecules that have these chiral light emissions. I mean, it's beyond my understanding of chemistry, really, these molecules, because they're so intricately designed. And really nicely engineered by the chemists who really specialize in this. But my favorite one is the one labeled F, because it reminds me of the droid battleship from Star Wars Episode 1. That's just being nerdy. But anyway, point is, if you flip to slide 12.
Also kind of looks like the ship from the Alien movies on Prometheus.
Oh, yes, that's a good one, yeah. Yeah, good point. So a macro scale use, like a day-to-day scale use of these chiral light emitting molecules, is that you could make security inks, that you could make features appear or disappear if you looked at them with kind of like adapted 3D glasses. So if you take the 3D glasses like you get the cinema, and you put the right color filter in it so that you only get a little bit of the light, like the bit that's strongly left-handed or the bit that's strongly right-handed, then you could have one lens that would be left-handed, one lens that would be right-handed, and you could see features appear and disappear. So there's a little cartoon of that with these slightly uncanny faces seeing features appear and disappear on a banknote. L is left, N is neutral, R is right-handed. But there's a nicer demonstration of it. This in a little picture with the sun and a moon. And this is from a group in Japan who made this demonstration a couple of years ago. It's really nice. So if you look through with the polarizers arranged a certain way, the sun's dim. If you look at it the other way, the moon's dim. So it's kind of like a little night and day demonstration that they did with these glowing europium elements. It's really cool. I quite like that. So security inks are pretty cool. Passports, banknotes, things is well, passports and banknotes are the ones you think of on a day-to-day basis. But if you think about things like, well, without getting a bit too grim, you think about news. In the news at the moment, there's a lot of conflict, and weapons tracking is a big thing for security inks. I know people who work on putting on, basically secret encodings onto all sorts of military hardware so that you can keep track of where the things have come from. If they ended up in the wrong hands, and then they, found them, they were able to say, right, where was this made? How did it get there? All that sort of thing. There's probably a whole world of security inks. Even though I've written a paper on it, there's probably a lot of top secret uses that they never talk about in public. Anyway, so I've been showing you all these spectra, all these complex spectra, and since the 1970s, those things were measured with a really slow piece of kit, like technology that's was around about the same time as the space shuttle, and it's good technology, but like the space shuttle, it was just kind of getting a bit old, and I love the space shuttle, by the way, but so one of the things that I did with my entirely unremarkable optic skills was build a spectrometer that could do it faster. So this is slide 13. There's a couple of pictures of like a black box with lots of wires coming out of it, connected up to various bits of equipment, and then another picture with the lid off. And basically, you can get a lot of stuff off the shelves these days to measure light. You can get spectrometers that plug into computers via USB ports and let us see the spectra of the light really detailedly without costing all that much money. You can get them for a few £1,000s. And they can read out the light spectra really fast. So the old equipment would do this in like 45 minutes to 1 hour, whereas we could do it in under a second now, these measurements, because of just off-the-shelf components. So, you often hear researchers say they were standing on the shoulders of giants. I mean, we're just buying this kit off the shelf and just basically just combining the kit with the technology from the 3D glasses, but just making it better and doing it more precise. And that lets us do these rapid scans of the chiral light that the chemists like, so that they can look at, so that they can understand what their molecules are. But also, potentially, we can make it smaller because people keep making this equipment smaller, and it's just a matter of cobbling it all together. We could even make it handheld so that you could, scan passports or something for authenticity. That's a bit into the future, but there's nothing stopping us doing it other than just having someone to work on it and the funding essentially. So if we get an industrial partner, we could definitely do that with them.
Yeah, Google did that with the radar chip. So they were like, hey, we want to have a radar chip in the phone, and 2 years later they had it. And that was thanks in partnership with universities and so on and teams like that. So definitely exciting.
Oh yeah, I hadn't heard much about the radar chip. Wow. So is this like for motion detection?
Yeah, it was in the Pixel 4. We're like on Pixel 6 now, but they've kind of it was supposed to be this high fidelity interaction, and we thought, hey, what if you did some viral detection with that? Would that work? So it was very surprising how small the electronics were, and how we ended up actually meeting the engineering team and working with them who actually worked on that. So it was quite interesting.
That sounds amazing. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I do love it when these things all come together. So basically, we gave these spectrometers 3D glasses, right? That's how I describe it. And we can also give microscopes 3D glasses. So if you go on to slide 14, I've got a still of a video that shows my old boss, the guy with the beard, this chap called Rob Powell, and he's working at this microscope. There's a type of microscope called laser scanning confocal microscopes. They're basically scan a laser beam across the surface of a cell, and then we see light glowing from a dye. And basically, the confocal microscopes lets you see as small as you can with light without getting into without getting into super resolution tricks. It basically lets you see a small, basically features as limited only by the wave nature of light. Now that's a whole other talk, and Nobel Prize winning stuff is beating the diffraction limit. But for a lot of biosciences, it gets the job done well. Of course, the bioscientists always want to see smaller and smaller, because if you can study individual molecules inside cells, then that's great. But that's a whole other side of the microscope coin that we won't get into today. But the point is, we've got these brilliant microscopes, and so one of my jobs when I was working at Durham was to take that technology that we used for the spectrometers and stick it onto the back of a microscope, which is kind of slide 15. It's, again, another slide with a lot going on in it, but all you really need to care about is that we basically take the light out the microscope, we send half of it one way and send half of it the other way, and then we analyze it for this chiral light. And we can do things like, if you look at slide 16, so I'll describe it for you. So we've got a sort of square image in red, and it's got a line down the middle, dark line in the middle. And if you look at it in normal light, it just looks red. And in the top half, we've got a left-handed molecule. In the bottom half, we've got a right-handed molecule. And these two, the left and right, are equal brightness. But if you look at this with our microscope and ignore the numbers on the images, it's not relevant here. But you see that in the left-handed chiral light, you can only see the left-handed molecule, and the right-handed chiral light, you can only see the right-handed molecule. So this is like a static test target. Whenever you do something, you want to do it with the simplest version first, before walk before you can run. That's what this demonstration is. And this could be cool for security inks, right? Because if you're trying to make things as complex as possible to make it hard to replicate, you could do complex patterning, intricate print patterns, or you could even do randomly, you could inject this sort of dye into little particles that would orientate themselves randomly and be physically impossible to double up, because it's a random pattern made from the Brownian motion of the solution, the particles in the solution. So I think it's called physically unclonable functions if you're into cryptography or security aspects. But anyway, that's the test target. The real sort of pièce de resistance of this work, which I was really happy to see, is on slide 17. I'll just describe it for you, because it's kind of a lot of information to look at. On the left-hand side, we've got some cells. These are mouse skin cells. And on the top left-hand corner, lit up in green, is bits of a cell called the lysosome, which are around the center of the cell. Lysosome, if I remember correctly, I always need to double check because I'm not got a biology background. Lysosomes are bits of the cell that contain digestive enzymes. And then we've in the bottom left-hand corner, lit up in green, we've got the mitochondria of the cell, which the meme is that everyone knows that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, right? So these are different parts of the cell doing different functions, and they're both lit up with a green glowing dye that you can buy off the shelf. Or two different green glowing dyes, as you say, one for the lysosome, one for the mitochondria. So what my colleagues did is they got one of their really nicely designed molecules and just stuck it in the cell, just let the cells eat up this small molecule. And they saw where it went to, and we found that the right-handed molecule went to the lysosomes, whereas the left-handed molecule bound to the mitochondria. Now, even though the molecules otherwise exactly the same in terms of structure, in terms of chemical composition, the right-handed one goes one way, the left-handed one goes the other way. And what they did to prove that this was what you could see with the chiral microscopy is they did an overlay where the green and the red overlay, you get orange light, and that's on the right-hand side. It's just showing you that these two things match up. So basically what we've got is, instead of having to rely on commercial dyes, which have which are quite generic. What you could do is, if you're a chemist and you're into biochemistry and you're trying to target very specific molecules and track where they go inside the cell, or what happens to a cell in a particular disease state, or as a cell ages, or any sort of problem that you've got in biosciences, you could probably custom design a luminescent, a glowing chiral tag to track it around the cell. And this is the first time that we've ever been able to like visualize these handy interactions, and more precisely localize these things than ever before. So just to finish off with the slide 18, it's basically just a triangle showing you that the cell biology, the physics, and the chemistry, they're all feeding back into each other. We've got new technologies, which opens up new applications in biology, which drives the chemistry, which drives the physics, which drives the biology, and back and forth. They're all interplaying with each other, and it's a really nice way of bringing together different things in science. And the thing is, the team that designed this aren't bioscientists with problems to particularly solve. There's a lot of scientists out there whose missions are to study particular diseases or to find out fundamentals of bioscience, and that's not the team. Myself and the colleagues, we're interested in this stuff, but we're not that deep into it. So one of the things that we're trying to figure out now is, well, we've got this unprecedented capability. What can we do with it? How can we track left and right-handed molecules inside cells and, keep them under surveillance, figure out where they go? What problems could that be? And it's one of these big questions because so many molecules in science are left and right-handed. Where do you even start, right? So that's why I've got a little picture of a suggestion box, because, if you know someone, or maybe yourself, if you're involved in any sort of research into biomolecules that are left and right-handed, we would love to know where this might go. We're kind of putting this out there to the world, like, what could you do with this? And it might be one of these questions that requires, a specifically designed chemical probe, but there's people that can design those. And it's been really fun to be part of this journey, because I think, as I said at the start, what was quite mundane skills for me as a physicist, maybe you talk to some people who here do like quantum optics and stuff, hear all sorts of amazing talks. I'm just one of these people that's like, I was mediocre in the physics department, but by being able to work with people outside and in chemistry and biosciences, we really learn a lot of different things and get to be part of something quite special. And I say you should always, if you've got a curiosity and people who can help explain things to you, you can really learn quite a lot and combine your powers, to be the whole to be better than the sum of its, to be more than the sum of its parts. So I guess that's sort of where I finish. Just to say, it's come kind of, the biology, the physics, and the chemistry all coming together, and we're really looking forward to finding out where this might go, particularly in cell biology. So thanks for listening to that main bit of the talk. If you've got questions, I'd be really happy to answer them, or just chat about it in general.
I have a quick question, and it's less the molecular biology thing, but when you were talking about light hitting for the left hand side and the right hand side, would that mean it would be possible to do something like have a painting that was actually painted with chemicals with left hand side, right hand side, and just change the the light, if you had
That sounds awesome.
picture in your
I love this idea.
or even wallpaper, and you've got a bulb that has two settings, and you flick it to one setting, and it's lions along the plains, and then you click it, and your walls now look like they're something else.
That would be so cool. That would be expensive wallpaper, I have to say, because a lot of these molecules that you need for this are made, just in small batches in chemistry labs, but in academic chemistry labs. But in theory, I love that idea. That's rad. Because security inks is one thing. I mean, it's basically the security inks but bigger. And that would be wild. Yeah, I really like that idea.
You heard it here first, people.
It's fun, Like as I think as scientists, we're often so close to the research and so driven by, well, where am I getting my next grant from? Am I going to still be in a job? All these things that sometimes it's easy to forget to have fun with it.
Yeah, I will say, as a company who is kind of taking some sort of proof of concept to an industrial product, the main thing that has been surprising to us is the cost of the signal generator hardware has gone down significantly. So most of the computing usually relies on being able to take samples at sufficiently high frequencies and then smoothing them out and whatever. So that's kind of one exciting thing, because now you can make perhaps a mobile laboratory of sorts that fits in a Pelican case or something like that. And you have a set of feature vectors, maybe not all of them as accurate as the others, but overall it gives you a real-time like, as you said, it takes very little time. It's like a second and the measurement is done. Uh, so it's by the time you're already lifting your finger off of the enter button, it's already done at that moment. So
Another question. You were saying about, please correct me if I've missed anything, for me not understanding, but you were talking about tracking molecules in the body, and that's like the holy grail sort of thing here, right?
Yeah.
And you said that there are emitting like left and right sided light, right? So you're using light to find them. You can use the left and right sided to find different types of molecules. Is that what you were saying? Yeah, in the
Yeah,
body.
so you can use the fact that we inject like a tracer. Well, introduce a tracer into the cells. These are cells under a microscope rather than being in someone's body. And why it would have to be under a microscope is another question that I can talk about. But yeah, so it's a bit like giving someone a high vis jacket, if that makes sense. Um, you give them something that makes them stand out. But in this case, it's more like a high vis glove that only that person could wear. It's tailored exactly to their hand. If that is a bit of a weird analogy, I just came up with it there. Um, an acoustic equivalent would be like a glove that emits a sound that would let you find someone in a room.
Right.
And only that person could wear that glove.
And did you say the problem then is tracking like individual molecules, like to be able to like say, with all the billions and billions of molecules in the body, that there's no way to like track what like one or one or two molecules out of billions? Is that
Oh well, that's something else. There are some ways of doing that. So if you can tag them well enough, you can use techniques called super resolution microscopy to get down to things that are on the scale of molecules and the scale of a nanometer or so. And that's a continually advancing field. That won the Nobel Prize, one of the Nobel Prizes a few years ago. I can't remember which one off the top of my head. Maybe someone can Google it. And yeah, it's specifically to, if you can exploit this sort of very specific left and right-handed binding, you might find ways of being able to tag the molecule and track it that you can't, that is more specific than just with your standard microscopy. As I said, it's like wearing a very specific glove rather than wearing like a bodysuit. You're getting more precise information about what it's doing, but also when it changes, because usually when biomolecules come together, they change shape, change function. So you can also potentially tune the interaction with the tracker molecule so that when the molecule that you're interested in binds the tracker molecule, might switch off its light, for example, or it might flip from left-right to light to right-handed light, something weird like that. It's a bit of an absolute open-ended question what we can do with this.
that's fascinating?
People in the 1960s called the laser a technology looking for a problem, right? And then look at what we do with the laser now. And it's kind of similar here. Is like we're technology looking for problems, and it's not necessarily how people think about science, but um,
What's the
someone's got to
scale
invent
of
the spanner.
What's the scale of producing the lenses? Are those expensive? I know a team out of Harvard, for example, found that they were able to make meta lenses, which allowed them to get this sort of effect. Um, but they did it using a CD burner, so they could actually just use the existing infrastructure and then have those little lenses from that
Oh yeah,
process.
yeah. The meta lenses. So you're thinking of like micro patterns, like little micro
Exactly.
patterned ridges that bend the light, equivalent to
Yeah.
your conventional lenses that you'd have in a pair of glasses, say, but they're really thin instead. So yeah, the optical elements involved. If you happen to be able to see slide 7, there's things called, well, linear polarizers. You can get ones that work well enough, and these quarter wave plates, yeah, you can get them to work well enough and cheap enough for 3D cinema, right? Um, but to get them for science, a quarter wave plate, a good one, will cost you about £700 plus tax. A linear polarizer, you can get a good enough one for about £50 plus tax. So at the moment, that's quite expensive. In normal people money, in science money, that's not all that bad. So I would say the cost of putting together one of these chiral spectrometers just off the shelf without any economies of scale is maybe similar cost to, a four-door car, a new four-door car.
What is that?
Whereas
Is that
the
like
old
10?
technology was like the cost of a house.
Yeah.
So, and there's potential economies of scale. It depends on what compromises you want. So the cheap cinema glasses, they don't do very well with blue light, for example. Um, and so you might get ghost images appearing in those 3D glasses, even if your vision's otherwise equal in each eye. So that's a cool question. Yeah, I mean, you could probably. I don't know about meta materials for quarter wave plates and linear polarizers, but I wouldn't be surprised if there is, because it's manipulating the electric field of the light as it goes past, as it propagates through the material, and it's not something I've worked on. It's something I see the popular science articles for these metamaterials, and it's really cool.
Do you have a favorite brand or model of polarizer?
I'm a Thor Labs kind of guy. Maybe that's just because so Thor Labs are a company that supply all this optics equipment, and they're quite clever. They sometimes give you sweets and like chocolate bars and stuff. Uh, so they just use basic psychology to like bribe people into buying stuff from them. But they're also very reliable, and they're based in the UK, so they're good to work with.
That's awesome. Yeah, my wife would bring like treats for all the students for her exams, and she found the students did a little bit better. So it's always fun finding a treat, kind of cheers you up and stuff.
Which shows in the
I
end
have a
we're just still
question.
just
Oh,
basic
sorry.
creatures. Sorry.
Sorry, Jamie.
Yes.
Shall we go Victoria then, Jamie?
Oh yeah,
It was,
I would just throw a comment on, and like in the end we're all just basic animals. At the end of the day, we just love sweet things. Anyway, sorry,
Yeah, absolutely.
sorry, Victoria.
oh, Jamie, exactly. I wanted to hear repeat. What was the name of the company that provides sweets and chocolates? We were
It's
thinking the
called
same thought.
Thor Labs, like named after the well, a dog that was named after the god Thor, right? I think it was the company's founder dog. Um, yeah, and they've got a little dog mascot, a little green dog. It's a very weird mascot image.
Yeah, I think the application I was thinking about is in ALS
Sorry,
research.
Katharina, I can hear the end of your question there.
The ALS research, because there you kind of want to track how the molecules change and why basically the monomer are dying. So I think
Sorry,
it
Katharina, you
would
keep
be
cutting out, and you're quite quiet.
Yeah, I don't know if that's us, but you're really muffled, Katerina.
Is it your new AirPods or earbuds?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Can
Yeah,
you hear me better now?
that's so much better.
Okay,
I didn't, those
cool.
expensive air canceling, I mean sound
Yeah,
canceling, they
they
don't
like,
work on Clubhouse. Yeah,
no, they
thank you.
don't.
They make you sound like you're in a small, tiny tin submarine and you're sinking.
And if you are, let us
Okay.
know. We'll come help.
Yeah, that would be quite horrible. Yeah, no, in ALS, um, I immediately thought about tracking, different molecules in ALS to kind of monitor how the motor neurons degenerate. You could start like in cell cultures from basically derived maybe from mouse models or so, war induce motor neuron death, and then start from there. I thought it was interesting because recently a paper came out that you could basically, with a skin test for if somebody has real Parkinson or maybe some other disease that just looks like Parkinson. And based on that, I thought that maybe you can look at skin cells, maybe also in ALS. That was another thought I had. So I think all these neurodegenerative diseases would be really cool to monitor different molecules and see how they change with the onset of the disease, and maybe one day we can diagnose when it's actually cell death is occurring and not just when we have the actual symptoms, because it's way too late to do
Yeah,
something about it. So that would be really cool.
that's really interesting to hear about. I'm really interested to hear that these were there was biomarkers involved in that you could find in skin cells for diseases that are presumably more to do with the neuroscience side of things, right?
Yeah, and then there was another paper that came out that you can see in the retina onset of dementia. So I guess you maybe have a way to monitor on cell types that are more easily accessible, and see what happens through the onset of the disease. That would be really cool. One could try first in like animal models that we have in these disorders, and then the
I'm really
classical
interested.
way how it used to be, like when I was at the marine biological laboratory, was we used this giant axons from squid and then dumped on all these mutated proteins onto the squeezed out cytoplasm from the giant squid, and then we could actually see quite easily how they were trafficked, and the trafficking was like if they accumulated somewhere, how that would work, just because the giant axons are giant and it's very easy to do. But with your technology, we could like move on, even in this very basic research, from models like squid and go towards a more closer mammal model, I think.
That's really super interesting. I love finding out about bioscience problems. I think I was speaking to Victoria at the start, and yeah, my PhD was in measurement of blood oxygen levels, and a lot of that was in the retina, which you mentioned. And then, of course, going to animal models, and what I work on now that I've moved on from this particular project as a postdoc, I've started my own research, which is based upon nanosensors for trying to measure blood oxygen levels through skin, through like a few centimeters of skin or muscle and so on, with the idea of trying to help cut down on the need for animal testing by reducing the amount of animals that the bioscientists have to use. Um, all these things, the technology development always takes a long time in science. And as humans, I think we often think about the terms of what's happening this today, next week, next month, next year, and it's hard to get the big picture advances to really think about them. I think they're really clear to see in biosciences. The progress that's been made in like 30 years in all sorts of fields of biosciences, bioinformatics, disease testing, screening, disease therapeutics for so many things. Particular types of cancer, for example, have been some cancers have been remarkably improved in terms of treatment, as far as I'm aware. Technologies that are now mundane in biosciences are, actually truly wondrous things, and people just treat them in a very blasé manner. So yeah, it's really interesting to hear about your thoughts about all this, and where it might go. I think it seems to be always important in biosciences to try and be specific about tracking how proteins change and how they function. I mean, there's so much research that goes into that. Is it AlphaFold that's based upon Google DeepMind? Is it DeepMind? Sorry,
DeepMind, yeah. The
not
other one is
prepared.
OpenAI,
Yeah,
but that one's Elon.
yeah. So there's so much, so much potential. Yeah. So if you could imagine creating a probe, a chemical probe that binds to particular fold states, for example, that you could read out with this, and you could be very sure that you're getting the right-handed probe and the left-handed probe. The alternative is also to have two probes at once, so you can use the same color channel and you can read out two probes. I mean, you can kind of multiplex that already by color, but potentially increase the amount of things that you can monitor by a factor of two. So, rather than just looking at red, green, blue, you could look at red, green, blue, but they're all left and right handed as well. So you could track, rather than just tracking 3 things, you could track 6 things in a cell. Or, there's other ways of going about this. And some people might say, I remember my PhD supervisor saying a factor of 2 is not important. But personally, I think a factor of 2 can be a huge help when your information is scarce and sparse. Doubling it up can be a huge boost. Anyway, I'm going off on a total tangent here. Is there anything else we should chat about?
Yeah, no,
It's been
I
very
agree. I think monitoring, for example, continuous monitoring, even if you don't know what you're seeing, you'll see that there was a change. And that could be a great early indicator for reducing not only healthcare cost wastes, because people are like, I think something's wrong with me. Oh, yeah, I definitely feel sick, and nothing's wrong. You're just a little bit anxious today. And so having something that gives us some sort of measurement or reading. And in fact, I think one of the best use cases right now is probably something like cattle monitoring, where you could probably build a gadget like this into a collar, and the animals could be monitored, and you could tell, for example, if a female is pregnant or has had some other change in her body that's actually going to be detectable and perhaps an anomaly compared to all the other animals. So, well, lots of industrial and applications in agriculture as well. So
Yeah, I haven't really thought about wearable tech for cows, but of course that's a thing.
yeah, and I heard about it here on Clubhouse. Actually, there was a cattle farmer talking about this problem, and they had an AI system, but they just didn't think it was that reliable. And they were saying it was like thousands of dollars of investment into this animal. So anything that helps you monitor that investment was kind of worthy for them to add. And their argument seems to be something like it's a quality argument. It's like it's so good that if it were bad, you wouldn't ever come back, so we would lose you for the rest of time, because one negative experience is sometimes all it takes. And so at least in terms of commercial applications, just saying that you have this kind of new Star Trekky kind of technology might even give you a market advantage. So there's lots of weird kind of considerations, at least in some of our discussions with some industrial partners.
Cool. So I'm just curious about what sort of biomarkers they might be reading out. I guess non-invasively, things like blood oxygen level, pulse rate, body temperature,
You can also,
skin
in some
flush.
instances, there are detectable differences in the presence of a pathogen, even when it's in its stationary versus exponential form, like a bacteria. So that's been kind of surprising. The fluorescence seemed to make the signal more noisy. So somehow, as you increase the fluorescent, it changes the like RF response of the molecules, and that was kind of unexpected, at least from our perspective. We're not really sure as to why that would be the case. It's obviously some sort of filter, but why did it change so significantly is indeed a weird question.
Oh yeah, that's yeah. So yeah, there's quite a lot of quite non-traditional non-traditional biosensors and biomarkers you're looking at there by the sounds of it. Totally different than the stuff that you might get in a smartwatch currently. Who knows what they might have in smartwatches in future? So that's really cool to hear about. I was talking to one of my colleagues this week who's trying to get into their own independent career in science, and one of their markets is pets, right? So that there's veterinary science and there's agricultural science, and cows are a big investment, but things like sheep, some farmers are a bit blasé about these things. They're always trying to keep costs down. But my colleague was saying there's a big market for pet health, making sure people really care about their pets and anything that you can do
Oh yeah,
to keep their
they'll give
pets
their
healthy.
pets medication more on time than they will take it themselves. So that's kind of an odd example.
That's wild.
Do you have any direction that you're hoping to go, like from here with your research, and where you're like looking to go in the next like 5 to 10 years?
Well, with this particular strand of the research, it's so I kind of left the team to do something else to start my own strand of research. But in terms of this chiral light, it's very much an open question. I think the security inks are on one side really, really promising, but at the same time, we're getting less reliant on traditional documents. So we still need passports, but we've got less and less reliance on cash. But you might see authentic devices. If you think of information security, knowing that the hardware is authentic is quite important. And I also mentioned earlier, things like military equipment. That's potentially like a big funder that could, feed into the more of the bioscience side, right? The bioscience side is going to be a lot slower progress, but it's going to be potentially tailored, hyper tailored to particular problems. And when I
Well, I'm
say
sure
hyper
they're
tailored,
listening. I'm sure they're listening now.
yeah. So in terms of the tailoring, if it's probably an entire PhD to design one molecule. So in the UK, that would be 3 or 4 years worth of research. In North America, that could be much longer. Your PhDs are much longer in North America. Um,
I know that this is like taking it slightly off direction here, but when you're mentioning about funding and stuff, would you find there would be any kind of like moral issues? Because all this stuff sounds incredible and exciting, but the idea of letting military people fund something like that scares me quite a lot.
oh, well, yeah, well, absolutely. I totally understand that. I mean, there might be arguments for saying, right, okay, you don't want to take uh, military money. I would say, like, if they're going to be making some of this stuff anyway, making sure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands and the security is, keeping it in the right places, at least, or keeping it accountable to some extent. Personally, I'm a bit more comfortable with that, right? Um, and that could go down to things like ammunition, for example, which is something Rob, who's the leader on this work, he likes to go um, to like target practice and stuff, which is quite unusual in the UK. Shooting is not as big a hobby here as it is obviously in other countries. But to keep, to be able to trace, for example, bullets, illegal ammunition is a big problem, I believe. There's there's different ways to spin that. And to be honest, I'm not really I don't really have to think about that because I'm not really involved in it anymore. Um, but I think the science side's the bioscience side's the more like interesting side from the science point of view. But for technology to mature and be useful, I think it's useful to have a few different um, inputs, and if you can make money flow from one side of it to another, to from the more commercially applicable side through to the more blue sky science side, then that would probably be a good approach. Yeah, it's not for me to decide these days. But that was a really good question, and I think it's something that is very important to consider as scientists and research, is how your technology gets used. And even the simplest hammer can be, is the hammer a moral technology? Well, you can use it to build a house, but you can use it to really hurt someone, right? It's it's a tricky thing.
That's why I was saying I was taking it a little bit off track there. Like I said, I know that we went from the science, but just when we mentioned the military, and it is typically a fact of life that normally military departments are more well funded to assist you if they think that something down the line can have results like what you're saying, even with regards to the bullets, or just like tracking people or something like that.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, yeah, tracking people, there's definitely a lot more invasive security measures, there than But already you get fluorescent luminescent tags. There's a thing in the market called smart water, which is, imagine you're a thief trying to steal something from a safe. If you break into the safe, um, and some sort of security measure is tripped, then it could spray this dye on you, and it's a dye that appears under ultraviolet, that really glows brightly under ultraviolet light. And it's nowhere near as complex as this that we've been talking about today. But it would be stained into someone's skin, right? Similarly, like there's other dyes that aren't that don't glow. I think the thing with the smart water is they can say, well, we know this particular batch of smart water came from somewhere in particular, and so they can link people to scene of a crime. Um, I don't quite know how they do that. It might be to do with the ratios that they mix slightly different colors of the glowing component, the fluorescent component of that security dye.
So if you're robbing a bank, don't stop to drink the water there.
Yeah, absolutely. So these are really important questions. Absolutely, as scientists, it's really something to consider. I don't know how scientists of the 20th century, you look at some of the most celebrated physicists of the 20th century, and all the just pure physics that they're involved in, but they might have also been involved in the Manhattan Project, right? Like the talk about a burden to live with for the rest of your life. Um, and that's a whole other issue and a whole other debate, but just to live with that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, like I said, that was my fault for just taking it to that direction, because I kind of like pushed it into more of a philosophical, ethical thing there. But just as it was coming up, I couldn't help but ask. Is there any questions in the room?
Thank you so much, Jimmy, for the questions. And it's going for an hour and a half, and we talked about around an hour. So I thank you so much, Louis, for taking more of your time than expected. But your research is so interesting, and I can't wait. So sorry that we took way longer. And yeah, thank you again for this great presentation. And although you moved on to, share with us this really interesting research, and always come back to Science Society. We'll have more guest speakers. Maybe you wanna listen, or you want to share what you're doing next, like when you have updates about your current project. So that would be also wonderful. So yeah, thank you so much, and thank you everyone for asking wonderful questions and making this discussion interesting. So yeah, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Katharina. Thank you for inviting me. I think this is a really cool platform. I think it's a really nice little community, and thanks for everyone for tuning in and for all the great participation as well. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, sorry about that. I happened to just do that kind of work, so I was like, oh my God, I've met another person who also, yeah. So,
And I'm
No,
just very curious.
I love the crossover. Like, yeah, it's really nice when you see something you're like, oh yeah, I feel like this is relevant. There's a lot of science where you kind of feel like, oh, this is way beyond me, or at least I feel like that a lot of the time when I see talks in chemistry and or bioinformatics and stuff, and like this is quite beyond me. I need the popular science version of this. But when there's some things that and you can go, oh, I can latch on to that. That's cool. And you never know where ideas might come from. I mean, my best ideas that have kept me in jobs have come from seemingly random connections. So it's always worth learning
Yeah,
and thinking
exactly.
about
I
things.
totally agree. And I also really appreciate that you have, this very broad spectrum of science that you use. I actually don't like to cut up science in these uh, categories we do. Like, I think we have to move on from that to really continuously doing real innovation. Like, this is just physics and this is just like we have to move away from that. So,
if you're a
um,
physicist, though, you would say that all your best ideas occur in the shower. Historically, that's highly probable.
I can tell you where my best idea occurred. It was when I was in a pub listening to someone talk about science, but they hadn't prepared their talk very well, so I zoned out. And that's when it all came together for me.
yeah, that's so interesting.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's really
I
cool.
understand where you're coming from there.
So, yeah, if you like talks like this, follow our science society, everyone, and we'll have tomorrow Dr. Fletcher. He's talking about the new method for training creativity. He's published a bunch of books and goes through a lot of data and comes up with really interesting theories. So he's a really interesting researcher. And then Dr. Lewis, also from the UK, he will talk about, he's a theoretical physicist, and he will talk about this latest paper, why evolution favors symmetry. And then Saturday we'll have Dr. Pascalis from Max Planck Institute talking about his technology, organic neuromorphic electronics. So it's a really cool new field. And yeah, thank you again. And to our special guest, Louis, thank you so much. And enjoy the rest of your day, morning, evening, wherever you are. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Lewis, for your time.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you. It's been a privilege.
Okay, bye. I'll close the
Bye.
Take
room.
care, everybody.
3,
Take
2,
care,
1.
everybody.
Bye
Bye.
bye.